Hi everybody, Dr. Hinkie here, and we are going to go over that cellular respiration and photosynthesis card game that's posted in your D2L. Just to kind of help you through this. If we were in the classroom, I'd be walking you through these steps just to help you figure out what you're doing. So what the card game is you have a series of cards, you'll have to cut them out, and you are going to, they have all the steps, the inputs and outputs, the steps for each of the processes involved in cellular respiration, so glycolysis, the prep reaction, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. And for each of those, they have the inputs and the outputs. And then same thing for photosynthesis, the light reactions, and then the Calvin cycle, or the light-independent reactions, and the three steps of that: carbon fixation, carbon dioxide reduction, and Ruby P regeneration. And for each of those, there are inputs and outputs that go into each step. And learning what goes into each step and sort of the flow of that, it really is a flow, it's not just random. It's important to really understand here's what's going on. Glucose is being broken down in this stepwise fashion, and at each step the end products become an input going into the subsequent product, and at each stage we break some more carbon-hydrogen bonds, and we do that so that we can get those hydrogens to the electron transport chain to generate ATP in cellular respiration, or so that we can put together our carbon dioxide and our water, our two inorganic molecules, to get a larger glucose molecule in photosynthesis. So what you'll have to do is first cut out the cards. And you see we have the titles, right? So we have the title, cellular respiration or photosynthesis. We have the steps. And then in blue, we have inputs. If you have a color printer, you can print these in color. Otherwise, you can do what I did. That you'll see is that I just used a highlighter and marked inputs in purple and outputs in pink. And so we've got all of those inputs and outputs for each step. So you'll cut out the cards. And then what I would do is first work with one at a time. So cellular respiration, that's what I always work with first. I like cellular respiration. So first take all the cellular respiration cards and take the title cards, kind of shuffle those, and then take the inputs and outputs and shuffle those. And then the process, you can play this in teams. In the classroom, we would do this in teams, and you'd go around the table with your cards that you've just dealt out, and so everybody would have some parts, some inputs and outputs, some steps, and you have to put them down in order. So as you go through, just take your stack of cards and go through. Here's my first card, Post-its. Nope, that's not it. Second card, nope, that's not it. Third card, until you can put them down when you come to cellular respiration on the big cards. That's my first one. Now I have to flip through the titles until I get to my first stage, which is glycolysis. So now I go to my smaller cards and I flip through. I can put these titles out first, inputs and outputs, and then continue to flip. Now you have to finish. You can't get any outputs from a step until you have everything that goes in. You must have all of the reactants. Everything that's going into the step has to be present for it to occur. So you have to list all of the inputs first. Once you have your inputs, go through your cards again, shuffle through, and put the outputs. You can put those in any order. There's not a particular order, just what are your inputs. Once I have all of those, I can move to my outputs. Only when I've completed glycolysis and have the outputs, have the end product that becomes an input to the prep reaction, can I move on to the prep reaction. So you'll continue until you have all the outputs from that stage. Then you can find the next stage, the prep reaction. What are all the inputs that go into the prep reaction? Right, I have those. Now what are all the comes, what comes out of that step, and keep going until you have gone through the citric acid cycle inputs and outputs, and then the electron transport chain. All right. And then, oh, there you can see where you'll do the same thing for photosynthesis. I drew this card here because I forgot to put it on your list, so you'll need one of those blank squares. You can draw this card out, and then I circled it as an output instead of an input, but what you want to look for are things that go together. If I end up with ATP, like in photosynthesis, first I have to generate a little bit of ATP because this process takes small molecules and builds a bigger one. That needs ATP. Well, where do I get that? If ATP comes out of a step, well, then I had to have some ADP and P to go in. And however many went out, I need the same number coming in. So these two will always pair up. My taxis, my hydrogen taxis in photosynthesis, it's NADP. That always pairs. I should have a match with how much NADPH I have, because this is the same molecule, but it's picked up a hydrogen here from the water and carried it to the electron transport chain to generate, it carries it to the Calvin cycle to drop off that hydrogen on our carbon dioxide molecule when we reduce the carbon dioxide. So these two always go together, or in cell respiration, NAD and NADH, or FADH and FADH2, because those taxi cabs, one is an empty taxi cab, the other has its passenger, the hydrogen. So it's carrying it somewhere and dropping it off. So then we'll go through all of those steps for photosynthesis and continue to expand until you have the entire process. And then as you complete each process, what you want to do is just go through your textbook and see, did you match this up right? So you can see my original picture. I drew this wrong, and I had my ADP plus P in pink, but it should be in purple or in blue as an input. And this one, for photosynthesis, for cell respiration, the accounting is laid out pretty well. It's precise. Photosynthesis, not quite so precise. The book doesn't tell you that there are 9 ADPs and Ps that go in to become 9 ATPs, because actually that number is imprecise. There are more, and the cells just get to use that energy. But 9 of the ATPs that can be produced in this step between the cyclic and non-cyclic reactions in the light steps in the light reaction, 9 of these are going to go into the next step. They're not going to all be used at the same time. As you can see here, 6 ATPs are then broken down to use that energy in carbon dioxide reduction, and then another 3 ATPs are broken to ADP plus P to regenerate that ruby P. So again, these match up in my first part of photosynthesis. I'm putting ADP and P in because I need ATP to go into my next step and build a bigger molecule. So I start with my electron transport chain in photosynthesis so that I can get some ATP in order to build my larger molecule. In cellular respiration, I am breaking down a big molecule, and my energy that I capture from breaking the carbon-hydrogen bonds goes to forming my ATP that then the cell can use for whatever work it has to do. Let's see. Once you've got that, try that, do one at a time. Cell respiration, maybe do it with the book first until you kind of get those connections of what goes in, what happens to it, what does it come out as. and then do that for photosynthesis. Do it with the book a few times, then try it without the book and double check your work until you can get to where you know what goes in and what comes out from each step. Then if you want to add an extra challenge, you can cut out these other cards. Where in the cell? So where in the cell do the different steps take place? Is it in the cytoplasm in the cell? Is it in the mitochondrial matrix? Or is it on the cristae, the inner membrane of the mitochondria? Is it in the chloroplast? Is it on the thylakoid membrane? Remember, the electron transport chains are the things that take place on the membranes. The other steps are either going to be in the matrix or in the stroma, or in the cytoplasm. And then another challenge, where to next? So for each of your outputs, what happens to it? Some of these outputs from a prior step go in and become an input in the next step. Others, those hydrogens get shuffled to the electron transport chain. Anytime you get that NADH or FADH2, the taxi cab with its hydrogen, its job is to ferry it to the electron transport chain. Some of the items stay right within the same step and just get recycled or reused over and over again. So once you've done that, here's the complete process of cellular respiration here on the left, including where each part takes place and what happens to each of the end products from each step. And here on the right for photosynthesis, the same thing. Where in the cell it takes place, or in the chloroplast where it takes place, and what happens, what's the fate of each of those outcomes, what happens to them, where are they used. So you're complete, both processes laid out looks something like this. And then when you're really good about knowing what goes in and out where, shuffle both processes together and see if you can't do them in parallel. Cellular respiration and photosynthesis. It's just kind of a fun way to really remember what goes where and see those connections between our inputs and our outputs. You'll see I put these side by side. For example, here, 2 pyruvates coming in the prep reaction and 2 coenzyme A's. What comes out are 2 acetyl-CoAs because those 2 combine, but I also lop off 2 carbons and 4 oxygens when I combine them and turn them into acetyl-CoA, and 2 hydrogens get lopped off. And so those become carbon dioxide, a waste product, and NADPH that gets shuttled to the electron transport chain. I also have a short 5-minute video here. There's a link to it that can just reviews how I did that, what the process is that you can follow. So you can take a look click on that to see that video summary there. I'm not going to play it as part of this video. That would be a little redundant, kind of meta. So, oh, there, I clicked on it. It's playing. So that is our entire process. And I hope that helps, and really practice that game. It can be very helpful. Thank you.